What's up guys, welcome to Munchkins Gaming, where we take your gaming to the next level. This is Munchkins logging in to bring you another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and welcome back to another Should You Pull video, where I give you my opinions for upcoming banners coming to the global version of the game. In this video, we are going to take a look at Edward's event. Of course, you can get his LD weapon in this particular banner, and the burst weapon featured in this one is still going to be Ardens. You do have the chance to get the EX weapon for Palom and Hope as well, and of course Edward's EX is also available here. Now before we do start, like and subscribe if you haven't already, because it does help the channel and I would really appreciate it if you do. Now without further ado, let's start this video. Okay guys, so we'll start this video off with Palom's rework, which he will be getting with the time of the release of this event. So with Palom's bluffs, basically, this will improve the attack up effect of the Dark Arts buff. It will now do a 6-hit Ice Magic Brave plus HP attack, whereas before I do believe it did just trigger an HP attack after he gains Brave. This will also have a 180% max Brave overflow limit, and he will have access to his Brave attack plus, which actually gets a change as well. This will increase in Brave hits to 6. Now the changes to Dissidia's Ice Crystal plus and grade is a little bit more. So first off, this will improve the max Brave up effect of the Dark Wisdom. It also adds a Stolen Brave overflow effect to Dark Wisdom as well. This will increase the Brave hit count to 8 and will have a 150% max Brave overflow limit. Now the splash damage is now going to be like 50, 70, 90 and the 100% splash damage to non-targets. Well, I guess the 100% is not considered splash anymore, but this has been increased from, I believe it was like 40, 60, 70, something like that along those lines. Now with the dual cast, it will now have an increase in Brave hit count to 6 and will have an increase in potency, will have a 120% max Brave overflow, and will have 50% splash damage to non-targets added to it as well. Okay, let's move on to Palom's EX, which actually is a very old EX if you really look at what it actually does. Now, it will give him the EX ability Stardust, which is going to be a 2-hit AoE Brave plus HP attack. This will inflict a ice resist down debuff for 4 turns, and then it will follow up with a 5-hit AoE Brave plus HP attack. This will have an increased Brave damage to a single target. The HP damage is going to be split amongst all enemies, and it will extend the duration of Dark Wisdom and Dark Arts for 3 turns. It also extends the duration of the Brave Attack Plus and Dual Cast for 3 turns. This will have a normal recast speed, and at 1 out of 3 increasing the Brave damage dealt, at 2 out of 3 granting a Ice Enchant for 6 turns after the initial Brave plus HP attack, and at 3 out of 3 this will increase its recast speed. Now if you do plan to realize this weapon, at 0 out of 3 this will have an increase in potency. It will get a 120% max Brave overflow limit and will increase its recast speed once again. At 1 out of 3 this will increase its max Brave and attack. Now at 2 out of 3 this is going to give him the buffs at the start of the quest, basically 8 turns of Dark Arts and Dark Wisdom, and 8 turns which basically enables the Brave Attack Plus and Dual Cast as well. This will also fill up his EX gauge to the max, so you can use his EX at the start of the fight. Finally, at 3 out of 3 it will change the way, I guess it will have increased Brave damage. That's pretty much it. It becomes a 4-hit AoE Magic Brave plus AoE HP attack, and then deliver the 7-hit AoE Magic Brave plus HP attack. This will have an increase in Brave potency, and it will have a 180% max Brave overflow limit, and will raise the Brave by 50% of the HP damage dealt after the first HP attack. The bonus sphere for this one is going to be Weak Boost Up Long. When hitting target's weakness, it will raise your max Brave by 10% for 6 turns. Alright guys, so after hearing all this information regarding Palom's rework and of course his realization, how much investment should you be putting into Palom if you want to use him moving forward? Honestly, to me, he needs to go 3 out of 3. you can probably sort of get away with 2 out of 3, but honestly 3 out of 3 is really the way to go if you really want to maximize the damage output, because the initial hit being only two brave hits without 3 out of 3 is not going to really max his brave out, right? So I think having that 4 hit, unless you always have like a major support characters that can always cap out his brave, you can probably get away with 2 out of 3 on that one. But if there are going to be some cases where you won't, and having that 4 hit AoE, it's not a lot, but it is something. And of course you can get 50% of the brave back after the initial first HP attack for the next 7 hit AoE plus HP attack. So I think it is something worth noting. Plus the increase in max brave overflow is pretty significant. It is going to be 180% versus 120%. And you have to remember the HP damage is split. It's not 100% to all targets. So having that max brave overflow is definitely going to help. Now the other really good thing about Palom is actually his longevity. That dual cast is pretty powerful, especially with the rework. He's not relying so much on his abilities. Now granted, you still need to stack up his buffs in order for you to gain access to the ultimate versions of his abilities, but nonetheless that dual cast is already really good. So longevity wise, I do feel like he is worth investing into. The main problem is he is just a selfish DPS, and you know what that means, right? The power scaling for DPS is pretty bad when it comes to this game. Basically there'll be like a flavor of the month or something along those lines. I mean, with Arden, I think I didn't mention it on my Should You Pull video on Arden, but I did implied it. So that is something you have to consider when you're trying to invest on like a pure damage dealing character. So that is something to note. I think if you are lacking on the magic DPS side, Palom can really fill in that role really well, however. Okay guys, enough about Palom. Let's move on to Edward, which is going to be a brand new hero or character coming to the global version of the game. Let's take a look at his abilities with all the passives included. Let's start off with his first one called Bard Song. This is going to be going to have 7 uses in total and will raise the party's brave based on his max brave. This will do a 4 hit AoE magic brave plus AoE HP attack. The HP damage is going to be split and will have a 150% max brave overflow limit and will grant him the hero's rhyme for 10 turns. This will also inflict a defense down to all targets for 6 turns and will increase the brave damage dealt on a single target. Now hero's rhyme duration actually decreases upon taking damage. This will raise the party's attack. Basically for himself it's going to be 20% and the party 40%. Now this will also increases the stolen overflow limit. For himself it's going to be 10% and for the party it's 20%. This will grant the party also some brave regen. Now while he's got the Awakened Courage buff active, this becomes Hero's Rhyme 2 with improved effects. Now the duration does not decrease anymore when he is attacked. Now the effect for the attack will increase to 40% for himself, 60% for the party, and the Stolen Brave will increase for 20% for himself and 30% for the entire party. Okay, now let's take a look at Hide, which have 8 total uses. This will still raise the party's brave based on his max brave and grants the Budding Courage buff for 6 turns. This will nullify the action delay and does not increase the turn count and will decrease the friend and summon action count as always. This will also dispel the Awakened Courage buff. Now Budding Courage basically raises his evasion rate up to 100% and increases his attack by 20% as well as his max brave. This also gives him an HP regen, so this is pretty good in terms of survivability. Think of it as Edge's buff as well, basically not getting hit. Now Awakened Courage will increase his attack and max brave up by 60%. And while Budding Courage is active, Hide becomes Return. So Return is going to be like a 5-hit Magic Brave plus HP attack with 180% max Brave overflow limit. This will raise the Brave by 30% of the HP damage dealt and will grant him the Awakened Courage buff for 6 turns. This will dispel the Budding Courage and will not consume an ability count. This will also revert back to Hide. Okay, let's move on to Edward's EX, which gave him the EX ability Mystic Waltz. This is going to be a 6-hit AoE Magic Brave plus AoE HP attack and will increase the Brave damage dealt when attacking a single target. This will have a 100% HP damage to all targets and will inflict 1 stack of Spoony Noise to all targets for 3 turns. This will have a normal recast speed and basically Spoony Noise will have a total of 3 stacks in total. The first stack, it will inflict like an initial Brave down. At 2 stacks, this will have a max Brave down effect to it as well. And finally at 3 stacks, this will have an attack down and will prevent Brave gain, which is like the green color, think of it as Yuffie's EX debuff as well, something along those lines, which just prevents enemies from gaining any Brave. So a total of 4 different debuffs in one frame debuff, which is really nice. And at 1 out of 3, this will increase the Brave damage dealt, and 2 out of 3, extend the duration of Spoony Noise by 3 turns, and finally at 3 out of 3 will increase the recast speed. Now if you do decide to realize this weapon at 0 out of 3, this will extend the duration of all debuffs inflicted by self by 1 turn, and increasing the Brave potency as well, and will have a 120% max Brave overflow limit. Now while buff, he will have access to his Brave Attack++. This will raise the party's Brave based on max Brave and will do a 3-hit Magic Brave attack. He will also have access to his HP Attack++, which is going to be 3-hit Magic Brave plus HP attack with a 120% max Brave overflow and will raise the party's Brave based on the HP damage dealt. At 1 out of 3, this will raise his max Brave and attack by 60%, and when the quest starts at 2 out of 3, he will grant himself the Awakened Courage for 6 turns and will have the Hero's Rhyme 2 for 10 turns. On the first turn, he will not consume an ability count, and when the battle starts, he will inflict the Spoony Noise to all targets for 6 turns. Finally, at 3 out of 3, this will grant the party's Brave based on his max Brave before he does the attack. This will increase the Brave hit count to 8 and will have an increase in potency, as well as getting a 150% max Brave overflow limit. The bonus sphere for this one is going to be Buff Success Initial Boost All Shorter. After granting a buff, this will raise the party's initial Brave max Brave by 5% for 3 turns. Okay guys, now let's talk about Edward's LD, which gives him the LD ability Lullaby. This will have 2 uses initially, and it will extend the duration of all debuffs inflicted by self for 1 turn. This reduces all enemies' Brave to 0, excluding the broken enemies, and will raise the party's Brave based on his max Brave once again. This will also inflict the Sleep debuff to all targets for 3 turns. Now Sleep will lower the defense of the enemy, they are unable to act, and will delay the turn by 1 upon expiration. The duration goes down by 1 turn whenever they are being attacked, except when summoning or during burst mode. After burst mode or summoning, this will only decrease their turn by 1. The effects occurs once per turn. Now at 1 out of 3, this will raise the attack by 20%, his attack by 20% I should say, and increase the Brave gain to 80%. At 2 out of 3, once again, increasing his attack by another 20% permanently and extend the Sleep by 2 turns. At 3 out of 3, this will once again raise his attack by another 20% and will have 1 extra use for his LD ability. Okay guys, so after hearing all this information regarding his abilities with all the passives included, his EX Plus and his LD weapon, how much should you be investing on Edward if you want to use this character moving forward, and just in terms of his EX Plus? Now to me, when it comes to his EX Plus, I think you can really get away with the 2 out of 3. Now the reason why I went with 3 out of 3 anyway is because he does lack the firepower. So the increase in firepower and overall damage that he can do is at 3 out of 3. Remember guys, his EX is going to be 100% HP damage to all targets, which is pretty amazing, and at 150% max frame overflow, I think it does warrant that 3 out of 3. But again, I can see people, and I can see myself just probably doing 2 out of 3 on Edward, just because we are lacking the resources to actually 3 out of 3 him. So you'll miss out on a little bit of damage, but I still feel like 3 out of 3 is probably the best way to go, seeing as he's not going to be doing a ton of damage, and having the access to that, especially when you are fighting multiple bosses, is definitely going to help out. So that is my thoughts on the EX Plus, and overall I can say that Edward is a very powerful support character with the debuff. With the debuffs, he have the spoony noise, and if you include sleep there as well, he's not taking a lot of debuff slots. So most of his debuffs is concentrated on one frame buff, which is really nice. So he can play along with other debuffers if you really want to. I guess the only generic debuff he really has is that defense down. Now the last thing that I really want to touch on is probably Edward's survivability. It's pretty amazing that he actually gets 100% evasion rate, which not a lot of characters really get. There's only very few characters that have like 100% evasion rate. So the one that comes to mind is obviously Galuf and Edge, but if you need him to dodge at certain times, he does have that ability to use. Now obviously if there is a guaranteed hit from the enemies, it's not gonna work, but nonetheless it is always pretty good to be able to dodge certain attacks. So that's basically like wasting one turn for the enemy, right? So I think it is worth mentioning as well in this summary. Alright guys, so we're finally at the end of this video, and the final question remains, should you pull? This is a hard one for me guys. There's a lot of factors for me regarding like giving you guys advice whether you should pull or not. So this is gonna be in that maybe, probably not category. So I still think you can spend some tickets. I personally will be spending some tickets. You can still use some gems if some of these characters are your favorites and you think you're going to use them moving forward. But here's the catch, right? If you are really going to use your gems, Kefka is going to be on the next banner with his LD and burst. So if you're looking for a magic damage dealer, Kefka has got you covered there. You're looking for a debuff and something along the lines that can acts the same way as sleep, maybe HP silence, anyone? Kefka's got you covered. So I mean, there's just that big thing on the next banner, which we are fortunate to know. So if you are looking for a magic damage dealer / debuffer, Kefka I think is probably a better investment, seeing as he does get a burst weapon. Now obviously burst weapons are always going to be a luxury. It's not always guaranteed that you're going to get one. So I guess take that with take that into consideration whether you want to pull on this or not. But in terms of just pure magic DPS, that is very helpful. I think Kefka is one of those characters that is going to be very useful. That HP silence is definitely unique and will save you quite a ton. So if you compare him side to side, I think Palom still does more damage, if maybe not like just in pure attack. But Kefka, I think with he had a rework not too long ago. It just increased his overall damage as well. So I feel like if I just compare Palom and Kefka, I would pick Kefka over Palom. And now if you're gonna pick Edward versus Kefka, now that's a hard comparison, a harder comparison, because they don't really work the same way. Like Edward's more of a supportive character. Even with Palom, right? Palom is like a pure damage. Kefka is a debuffer first and foremost, I believe, not a magic damage dealer overall. But he does it well enough that, you know, that debuffs and the HP silence put him on top of Palom. I think that's just my opinion. So if you're pulling for this banner, I think you would be pulling more for Edward rather than Palom. So if you are after some sort of unique support character, then Edward is probably a very good one to pick up. Plus that sleep, man. I mean, he's the only character that can do it. So, I mean, if you want to have fun with it, then I suggest you can go ahead and pull. But I would suggest really to look at your roster. Do you actually need another support character? We do have Dimensions End 16, I think, or something along 12. Sorry, was it 12? No, can't even remember. But there's a new Dimensions End coming out soon. So if you are lacking in the characters, I mean, there is this banner and of course the Kefka banners as well. Now the Kefka banners are actually not too bad as well, right? So in the first banner you can get Shadow, you can get Aerith, and on the other one you got Seymour, you got Lise, you've got Freya as well. So there's a bunch of characters to choose from, so that makes it this banner really hard for me to say yes and, you know, skip this banner or something along those lines, like a very straightforward answer. Yeah, it's just really going to depend on your situation. Personally, like I said, I'm gonna be spending some tickets on this one. But hey, that is it for this video, guys. Please do remember to click like and subscribe once again. It does help the channel, and I really do appreciate all the support that you guys give me. And of course, you can follow me on Facebook and on Twitter at Munchkins Gaming, and leave down in the comments below if you are planning to pull on this banner. Let me know your reasons why, as I think it is a very interesting banner to pull on if you are pulling on the banner. Let me know down in the comments below. This is Munchkins logging off. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next level.